The continuing fallout from the three C's, COVID, conflict, and climate change, underscore the reality that the status quo in energy production and consumption is unsustainable. The future longevity of planet Earth will depend on our ability to transition from fossil fuel-based energy to renewable forms of power generation. We can't afford to take our time in this transition, but how do we make progress without causing harm to industries and households accustomed to cheap fossil fuels? Our next panel will explore these thorny issues. I'm pleased to invite to the stage Tuan Syed Ahmad Muzri Syed Faiz, Managing Director of Jaguar Land Rover Malaysia at Sime Darby Motors, Tuan Haji Ahmad Faraid Mohammed Yahaya, Project Director in the ESG Project Management Office of TNB Power Generation Sendirian Berhad, and Encik Alizan Mahadi, Senior Director of Research at the Institute of Strategic and International Studies, also known as ISIS Malaysia. Mr. Chow Sang Ho, Consulting Managing Partner at EY, will moderate the discussion. Gentlemen, you are invited to the stage. And with that, Chow, I'm going to hand the floor to you.
Thank you, Miss MC. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for coming back after lunch. Was worried that we'll lose you. Anyway, my name is Chow from Ernst & Young. To start off, if you don't mind, we're going to ask each one of our panelists to give a short introduction of themselves and the role they play in their organization and how does it relate to EV. So maybe we start from Alizan.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming in for the graveyard session. I hope everyone is awake for the session. Okay, my name is Alizan Mahadi. I'm Senior Director at what I told Chow, the Good ISIS, Institute of Strategic International Studies. And I've been focusing quite a lot on the topic of sustainability, on ESG, as well as energy transition, especially from a public policy angle. I've been working, for example, on the National Policy on Climate Change, drafting that, and also various other policies within the government. So I'll hopefully provide a more public policy perspective to this panel.
Thank you. So Encik Alizan is from the Good ISIS and has helped government with public policies on ESG and climate change. So he's the man that we're going to ask more difficult questions. Encik Faraid from Tenaga. Encik Faraid.
Right. Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Faraid. I am the Project Director of ESG PMO, coming from TNB Power Generation in Berhad, which is 100% subsidiary of TNB. Basically, we are in the generation sector, which is the most difficult part of it to produce the clean energy. Right. There's a transition. I'm involved in the carbon reduction as well as the carbon management side of it. So we align to the sustainability pathway that we together with the government. Thank you very much.
Right. So he's the man in Tenaga to help transition to the clean side, the bright side. And you, Tuan Syed.
Thanks, Xiao. Yeah, I totally agree. This is the most difficult session. Actually, it's after lunch to keep you guys awake. But we'll do our best. My name is Syed Muzri, Syed Ahmad Muzri. I'm currently the Managing Director for Jaguar Land Rover Malaysia. I also look after the newly born baby in Sime Darby Motors, the BYD brand, which I'm going to share later on, the fully electric cars. And I'm currently head the EV related matters for Sime Darby Motors Retail and Distribution Malaysia. So been with Sime Darby over a decade, multiple brands. I was with BMW, Ford, Jaguar Land Rover now, McLaren at one time, and was with strategy, with group finance. Hopefully I could make some sense to you guys for the next an hour and quarter.
Thank you so much, Tuan Syed. Tuan Syed has agreed that he'll give a free EV car if you stay till the end and answer 3 questions from him about ESG transition.
Sure.
Model car. Okay, I didn't say how big the car, right? Anyway, let's start. We thought the best thing to do is let's listen to our... Oh, before that, I think the MC mentioned this. The topic we're trying to cover is balancing values. So on one hand, you know how tough the economy is. So how do we balance, try to make some money for our shareholders, our employees, and surviving that challenge? And the other one is balancing environment. Because we know that if we don't do what we need to do for the environment, our children, grandchildren will not have what we have, right? So how do we balance that? To start off, we thought it's good to hear from Tenaga because they've done a lot of planning around transition. Let's hear from Encik Faraid, and then perhaps from there we can lead on to other questions. Hope you're okay with that, right? So Encik Faraid, over to you.
Thank you, Chow. The presentation will be here.
I think so. The slides.
The slides.
Okay.
Right.
Is
So
that back?
I just stand up.
Yeah, thank you,
Right,
sir.
thank you.
Sir. Sorry, I think, yeah, they are showing there also, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, good afternoon and Assalamualaikum. So, I'm coming from TMB Power Generation Sdn Bhd. Thank you very much to MIDF for inviting us to the Green Conference 2023. So, we can move to the next slide, whereby we have this energy transition journey that Tenaga is embarking. We started from the 2021, August 2021. It's not that very recent. So there's a bold move upon us to go for the zero emission by 2050. So if you look at this from the 2025, we are targeting about 8.3 gigawatt renewable energy. So now the MB has already achieved about 3,000 megawatt, not only domestic, but internationally. As we can see what has been announced by the government, they believe that by 2025, they can achieve 31% of renewable energy. Now, at this stage, we are able to capture achievement is about 25%. So this is a good, record at the moment. So then for us as TMB generation, power generation, we are 100% owned by TMB. So about 70% of our generation of electricity going to your home, to the industry, is based on coal and gas. Yeah, about 45% is based on coal and about 30% based on gas. So TMB and TMB Genco, we call ourselves TMB Genco, that we have commitment that we want to reduce the intensity of carbon by 35% year come 2025. And as well as to reduce our coal-fired power plant, coal capacity now is about 6.8 gigawatt. We want to reduce to 50%. So that's coming to 2025. And our aspiration basically to go to 2050, yeah, where all the GHG emission, not only the carbon dioxide, plus the methane as well. So that's very important. Most of us think only carbon dioxide, but it's more to it, the methane as well. Yeah. So that causes the global warming. The methane causes about 8 times the global warming. So that is our coal-free by 2050. So this is actually we have to balance the financial sustainability plus our shareholder value as well. Yeah. So we can move to the next one. Right. You can see that on the top right, on my right, basically we can see that starting from the early in the 80s, we have all the oil-fired power plant. Then we moved to coal for the diversification because we have the oil crisis at that time. Then we moved to coal is basically to have a mixed generation of fuel. Now we can see that our target, not only coal, then we have this hydro and gas as well. Actually, for this generation mix, we have to maintain a certain mix so that it's a security of supply, right? So from here, the gray, which is the coal, we intend by 2040 that we aspiring at the retirement of the coal-fired power plant. So we move from 2040 to 2050. That is all be based on the gas as well as hydro and as well as this green tech energy, which include solar. So looking at the bottom line, at the bottom, we can see our move to contribute reaching 2035 intensity. Currently, what TMB generation is that we are producing about 0.53 ton of CO2 per megawatt hour. This is based on the index. So you can see that the trend, we are going to go down by 2045, we're going to 0.06 basically. Yeah. And finally, zero. That means CO2 ton per megawatt is zero. So we can see that the black, actually from 8444 are the coal-fired power plant. So those are our commitment. And to fast track the decarbonization, we have to expect carbon reduction and carbon management. So the carbon reduction, we're going for basically to retire our coal-fired plant early. But that's subject as well as to shareholders and approval and also the authorities. I believe TNB Genco, most of our plant, we have our investors as well from EPF, from PNB. So retirement of coal-fired plant, we need their blessing as well. Yeah. And the other one we are looking as well as on the cleaner fuel and the green tech. This is where, alhamdulillah, praise to God, we managed to get the repowering plan which the government has approved. This is to replace when we're going to retire coal. We need, because coal actually is a base load plant. I mean, talking technical term, it provides a steady load. And coal as well, it stabilize our tariff. Yeah. So then is to do this fast track of decarbonization, we need a replacement. We call it the repowering. That's why we are going to build a new power plant in Kapar, the SKAB, about 2,100 megawatt, as well as Parker, 1,400 megawatt. And this is be a transition. We use gas as a transition fuel. Then later on, we will change to gas, and we change to hydrogen. So these two repowering project will base, when we commission the plant, will be hydrogen ready, basically. So after we commission the plant, we target by 2030, that or 2032, the latest. 5 years later, we will co-fire with hydrogen. So we reduce the carbon intensity by using hydrogen. And in 10 years time from that, we will use 100% hydrogen, which is zero coal CO2 emission. But that's subject to the technology readiness level. Yeah. So this is very important. And also on the third one, we have to have some strategic partnership with the technology, because the technology comes from various we call technology providers. Example, we are looking on the hydrogen side, the production of the hydrogen. Currently we have various colors of hydrogen, the rainbows of hydrogen. Now we have the blue hydrogens. Then the most expensive now is green hydrogen, which is about $6 per ton. But as a company that we're going to utilize the hydrogen, we have to see what's the cost effectiveness in production of electricity. Yeah. And the other one, the CCUS, is the carbon capture utilization system. The CCS, most of us, when coal-fired plant or gas-fired plant, we have the carbon capture. When we capture the carbon, now what to do with the carbon, right? So most of us, we store. So there's a logistic cost to it. Yeah. So the U part come in, whereby we can use the CO2 capture for the enhanced oil recovery. And if you look in Japan, they send it to algae production, whereby it produce the aviation fuel. Yeah. Aviation fuel is a clean fuel for the aviation. So now every industry have to go forward to use, I call this green fuel. So algae will do that. Not only that, in Japan, the CO2 that capture from the waste to energy plant, they send it for the enhanced photosynthesis. Yeah. So they're saying that what we understand, the yield went up 2 to 3 times. Yeah? So that's very important on the U factor. But overall, we have to see the balancing of the energy trilemma. That is very important. We're talking to the panel here, what is for us, what's for the consumer, what's for the nation. Yeah. Looking at the sustainability, we are going to get a good environment to maintain less than 1.5 degrees centigrade, not affecting the global warming. We have to do the decarbonization. But when we do that, we have to look at the energy security, because in Malaysia, about 50% is coming from coal and 20% coming from gas. In reducing this decarbonization, this fossil plant, we have to ensure that the 24/7 of electricity is available to all of us. Yeah. So it's very important, the energy security as well. So that's one. And then the other one, for this good environment and the clean strategic technology, there is a cost to it. Yeah. We have to look at what is the affordability, the energy equity here, right? So currently, I believe most of us, if you look at the statistics, we are the second worst tariff in Southeast Asia. Yeah. So when this happens, whether our public are ready for that, this is very important, right? Okay. So we move to the next one. Am I taking your time? Ciao. Last one, okay. Right. So looking at this, this is the ecosystem, right? So when you look on the right, on the decarbonization, we have the, I mean, these are a bit technical, but anyhow, I have to explain. This is where the industries, the SME can come in. It's a new business model we have to see, because when we plant up the coal-fired plant, most of the SME and the vendors are based on the coal-fired plant, giving the services, the equipment, and also the gas plant. But now when we go to this decarbonization, we are coming in with this ammonia, with biomass as fuel. Yeah. So this will provide an opportunity, business opportunity for the SME, for the security of supply of biomass, also ammonia. Yeah. Currently, I think in Malaysia, the ammonia basically is used for the fertilizer. But soon, ammonia is a carrier of hydrogen. We have to use ammonia as a source of fuel for our combustion. And also the floating solar, the SFPV is the floating solar here. We are going to penetrate in the floating solar. Now most of our solar are grounded, yeah. But due to the land limitation, we have to go for a floating solar. The what I call the pool which is not used, and also our reservoir, our hydro reservoir. Recently, we have the MOU with the state of Terengganu to develop the floating solar there. Yeah. So this is where is an opportunity where business can come in. And we're also looking at the pump storage. Yeah. The pump storage, whereby this is hydro, whereby we can suck the water back during night time and produce the electricity. So this is a pump storage. And then we can look on the clean side on the solar farm. So whereby the business is there to manufacture the solar, to install the solar, and to service solar as well. So in TMB, we are not looking at the government through SEDA have this plan for the large-scale solar, but in TMB as well, we have the rooftop solar. The industry go into the rooftop solar as well, and then the wind farm. For TMB, we have acquisition of international company for the wind farm. But unfortunately, in Malaysia at the moment, because the wind is less than 5 meter per second, but there now research is ongoing for the low speed wind turbine. So this is the area whereby business opportunity is there. We can look into that. And then the other one is the battery storage. Yeah. So the battery storage, whereby the battery storage actually will complement the solar, because solar basically is depend on the sun hours. After the sun hours, then the generation from solar will dip. So by having the complement by battery, at least the battery will be charged during the sun hours, and then at that time the battery will generate electricity basically, right? Okay. Thank you very much. I believe that these are the pathway TMB and TMB Genco is driving towards the decarbonization.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's very expensive lecture, Alizan. Very, very good. Thank you so much, Faraid. Before I forget, please use slido.com. The password is energy to key in your question. But let me summarize 3 key points from Encik Faraid's presentation. Number 1, Tenaga is committed. By 2025, you got 31% from renewable energy. By 2035, 12 years from now, 50% reduction in coal. And by 2050, net zero, right? Fantastic. By 2040, actually no more coal, right? Fantastic. Number 2, actually I made a mistake. The dilemma or the balancing is of 3. Environment, affordability, and security. That's very important. I was discussing with Encik Alizan, he'll spend more time on that. And then the third item, which I hope we hear, what Encik Faraid said. ESG and transition is not just a cost for us, but business opportunity. The last slide that he showed the different opportunities that's coming out that if we are smart enough, we can capitalize. So thank you very much. We're going to give Encik Faraid a rest. We'll come back to him. Yes, give him a round of applause. We'll go to the CEO now, Mr. MD. Tuan Syed, from Sime Darby Motors' point of view, what are we doing in transition and how are we addressing it as an organization first before we go to the EV part? Go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Xiao. Sime Darby Motors, or Sime Darby as a group first, at the holding company, we are very committed. 2 years ago, at the end of financial year 21, we have launched our sustainable blueprint, where we have a very clear fundamentals. 3 things that we wanted to achieve. The first one, we wanted to reduce the carbon dependent by 30% in the next 5 years from 2020. Number 2, we have put aside 250 million ringgit minimum on any ESG initiative. And the third one, our current product portfolio, we are committed by 2025 to have 50% of energy efficient cars from 2020 numbers. So that's about 2 years away from now. So that's from the holdings perspective. But from Sime Darby Motors, as you can see, if you follow the news, we have brought in a lot of EV cars, which is much more cleaner, which is much more, I would say, well anticipated, with certain range anxiety addressed compared to the previous models of EV car or plug-in hybrid. So I'll explain that in a bit more detail. So in terms of the cars that we brought in, the latest addition, which is on top of the brands that we carry, as you know, BMW, Hyundai, Jaguar Land Rover, Porsche, Volvo, they all have got an EVs earlier, but we have a new addition in September last year. We signed an agreement with BYD. BYD is direct competing with Tesla. And in December 8, we have launched BYD in Malaysia. But what's the acceptance of those cars in Malaysia? It's a fully electric car, more accessible compared to the brands that I mentioned earlier. But what's the response like? Nobody knows until we have launched that car. In the first month, we collected 1,000 orders. During the launch itself, the last 3 days, the 3 days that we had in Bandar Malaysia, we collected almost 850 orders with 5,000 test drives that we did. So what does that tell us? As Malaysians, we do accept that. And as long as we have an accessible model that we brought into Malaysia, we are ready. But there's a concerns of range anxiety. There's a concerns on where do I charge? Do you have charging facilities enough? This morning session, if you follow me, I think you guys are also in the committee. There's 2 things. One is about the upskilling of the current technician. What happened to the rest? And number 2, does it solve the jam problem? It's not supposed to solve the jam problem anyway. But would you like to start in a jam with a much more cleaner air? Or would you like to start in a jam with much more of polluted air? So that is a different aspect of what we are looking at. So we are bringing in more cars. We have delivered 1,000 cars in the first 3 to 4 months. And we have actually had more models coming in the next couple of months. That's just with one brand, with fully BYD, that I think everybody is anticipating that in Malaysia. And on top of that, earlier plug-in hybrid cars, the electric portion or the battery portion caters for maybe 38 kilometers, 40 kilometers. The latest one, 70 kilometers. But the current technology of cars range minimum about 400, 480, and the new one that is coming going up to 700 kilometers per charge. So that's enough to cater for Malaysia. If you are from Peninsular Malaysia, from KL to Johor return, KL to Penang return, or up north, but it depends on your driving style, right? So if you were to drive as per the usual driving style, yes, that you could be the range. But if you were to drive different driving style, it could be shorter. So similar to petrol, right? So similar to ICE cars. So the acceptance of Malaysia. So to address that second point that I mentioned first is on the range anxiety, whether we have enough chargers in Malaysia or not. There's 2 types of chargers. One will be on AC chargers, which you install at home. You can use a 3-pin plug to charge any EV car. It just takes longer. Or second one, you have the few brands there. The Wallbox. The Wallbox is a brand, but there's also, it's called Wallbox, whereby you charge overnight for 5 hours. It will give you full 400, 450 range. And when you travel, the second type of chargers we call DC charging, the direct current charging. That's the fast charging that you see along the highways. And we have done a study, range anxiety to address. Every 100 kilometers we have a charger, we are sorted. So all R&R with multiple players now on board has actually catered for that. There's some Petronas chargers, which is Gentari. There's also chargers from private owners that charge EV. There's a lot of players out there, and that has catered that problem of range anxiety for you to charge. But bear in mind, most of the charging is still at home. You don't charge at the public places all the time, as long as when you travel. And at the hotels, at Sime Darby Motors perspective, we have actually installed DC chargers, AC chargers at hotels, so that when you stay up at certain of the hotels, overnight it's been fully charged. In Penang, in Johor, yes, the take-up rate is still in the beginning of the stage, because Malaysia, what spurs this EV to come up very highly now is due to the tax exemption the government has provided to us, which we welcome that. So the zero tax exemption for CBU cars has been extended until 31st December 2025. And for locally assembled cars, CKD has been extended until 31st December 2027. So that provides other OEMs, other brands to bring enough cars to Malaysia, hopefully, in the next 2 years that we have left, and more accessible cars. So the keyword is still accessible cars, because the premium brand has got cars ready way, way longer. The European, the Western has got a lot more cars ready compared to us in Malaysia, due to multiple reasons, whether the charging infrastructure is there or not, and all those things, right? So now, at this moment, we have accessible cars, and we have charging operators on board. We have enough charging station. I wouldn't say enough is enough, because that grows as we put more cars on the road, right? The more cars, the more demand, the more chargers out there. Similarly, so to make it viable, we have to put more cars on the road. So for the first 6 months of this year, overall, as a motor industry in Malaysia, we have put more EV cars compared to the last 2 years of what we have in Malaysia itself. So we are moving into the right direction, but the key word still, as what we have agreed earlier, is the balance that we need to find between all factors.
Thank you. Let's give him yeah. Let's encourage him, right? So number one, Sime Darby as a group is committed to 50% reduction in 5 years. And the other one is
50% of product portfolio will
product
be energy efficient vehicle by 2025.
and 250 million committed
we have
to work on the ESG. So that's on the corporate side. And on the business side, as you can see, the EV cars, what they're doing, the charging and all that, to encourage us Malaysian in this transition. So thank you very much. So you've heard two people from the I guess the private side, the business side. So let's listen from the good ISIS man. What are the good policies, national policies that's coming up, and how does that affect both Tenaga and EV and the transition that all of us should know? Alizan.
Thank you, Chow. Now, it might sound like a very straightforward question, asking about policies in relation to ESG, in relation to sustainability and energy transition, but it is a very complex question, actually, for a few reasons. Firstly, the area of sustainability generally is very cross-cutting. Here, we're talking about just energy. We have two major sectors, transportation and electricity generation. Also, you've got other sectors such as climate change, which their policies also influence strongly these sectors as well. Also, working in public policy, I think working in the sustainability field, this is probably the most dynamic area of public policy I've ever seen. It's accelerating very quickly. Public policy, whether in Malaysia or internationally, is changing all the time. So the goalposts change constantly. So it's very complex to see the overall picture. And thirdly, on top of that, when we talk about policy, we cannot only think about policies being formulated domestically within Malaysia. We have to think policies formulated elsewhere as well in other countries. We also even have to now look into private-led initiatives or policies. When we talk about ESG, for example, this is more private-led. This is for investors and financial institutions rather than public policy. So I'll start with that complex landscape that we have in terms of discussing policy. So when we look at some of the domestic policies, once again, with the topic today, ESG. Now, once again, we have to understand ESG is private-led. So there's a major question here, first and foremost, should public policy come into ESG? Because this is within a private-led initiative. But there are two ways that we have seen both in Malaysia and internationally how governments and public policy influence ESG specifically. Firstly, is in terms of mandating reporting and information disclosure. Here, for example, we know public listed companies under Bursa will need to undertake the sustainability reporting and disclose information, certain information according to these standards. And more we are seeing these standards also being encouraged to be implemented by others as well. But in terms of government, what Malaysian government has announced is to facilitate the compliance to these ESG standards, especially for SMEs. So we know that by the end of the year, there will be a policy launched by I think the Ministry of Finance to facilitate and support, especially SMEs, to comply with ESG standards. But once again, I have to highlight that when we talk about ESG, that is the limit, I would say, of public policy. It is not for government to set the goals of ESG. Now, in terms of energy transition, I think it's worthwhile to quickly mention here, we did launch a National Energy Policy 2022 to 2040 last year. So this provides the long-term energy transition plan for Malaysia. And interestingly, the key thing about this policy is it is a national energy policy. So it doesn't focus only on the power sector, but it also focuses on the transport sector and other sectors as well. So it's a very comprehensive strategy. A few of its targets here I can highlight. In terms of the transportation sector, it is increasing public transport modal share from 20% to 50%. So this might reduce some traffic jam with the transition to public transport. Increase EV share from 1% to 38% by 2040. Significant increase. 38% by 2040, yes, from 1% now. In terms of energy efficiency, increase of industrial and commercial energy efficiency savings from below 1% to 10%. And of course, what Chief Faraid was talking about is energy generation, which the aim is to more than double the installed capacity of renewable energy by 2040. This also includes a decrease of percentage of coal in installed capacity from 31% to 18%, an increase in the percentage of renewable energy in total primary energy supply from 7.2 to 17%. So you can see these are very major shifts within policy. And then there's climate change as well. In terms of climate change, the government is formulating an updated national policy on climate change, and this will be more in line with our commitment to the UNFCCC at the international level of reducing our emission intensity by 45% by 2030. And also there will be a study undertaken, which is a long-term low emissions development strategy. And this study is very important because it will highlight for each sector what are the emission reductions that are required for each sector. So this will be also very important for the energy transition plan. But as I mentioned, we also have to look abroad for some of the policies that are up and coming. We know the CBAM, for example. I think many are now familiar with the carbon border adjustment mechanism, where policies or where carbon intensive industries around the world will have to be a part of essentially of the EU emissions trading scheme. So they will be a part of the carbon tax and the carbon trade that is implemented within the EU. Also, the EU has another up-and-coming policy, which is the Corporate Sustainability Directive as well, which will also mandate reporting of ESG for countries that or companies that serve goods and services that trade with the EU. So I think, again, it's a very complex landscape. We have to look into the domestic policies, but more and more within this field, we also have to look into all the policies that are formulated elsewhere to see how it affects each of the sector. And it will affect each of the sectors differently, but what is definite is there will be a shift towards this energy transition and compliance with ESG standards. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for explaining the complexity. The point that you mentioned about CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. So I understand that if we do not comply, we cannot export. Let's say I'm a SME here in Malaysia. If I don't comply, I cannot export to EU. Is that it, right?
Correct. I mean, the coverage, it starts with a few sectors only, but first and foremost, I'm going to slightly not change the topic, but I've said that even if we don't have a carbon tax or a carbon trade, we should at least have a shadow carbon trade. And the reason for that is, first and foremost, you need to calculate your do your carbon accounting first and foremost. So if you don't have the carbon accounting first and foremost, it will be you won't be able to trade.
Sure.
Secondly, if you do have the carbon accounting, then you would have to comply with the EU emissions trading scheme, which will mean there might be a levy on the carbon that depending on your carbon intensity of your products.
Right.
So it's not that you cannot trade, but first and foremost, if you do not have the carbon accounting in the first place, then you will not be able to trade. If you have it, then it will be dependent on your reporting.
Very good. So, and Alizan also mentioned ESG should be private-led. There's mandatory reporting. There is the National Energy Policy, which sets targets for us. Perhaps it's good news that EV is going to take 38% of the market share by then. You also spoke about climate change policy. I heard this morning there's the National Energy Transition Plan coming out in August. There's a long-term, low-emission development strategy. So there are plans, direction coming out from the government to kind of inspire us and set direction, but it's private sector led. So that's good. I'd like to go back to Tenaga. Faraid, there are quite a number of questions from the floor on Tenaga. Maybe we pick the first three and then we go to Sime. So the first one, I think you can read, right? What is TNB's initiative to encourage clean energy use? And you can answer that question first.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Looking at the first question, initiative to encourage clean energy use for household. So we have this first of all, this efficient use of equipment, like
Right.
fridge, aircon, is all efficiency usage of electricity, and as well as secondly, we have this the rooftop solar under our G-Spark. That may answer the question number 3 as well. Yeah.
Okay.
G-Spark.
G-Sparks, okay.
So it's 100% owned by TNB. We have G-Spark that facilitate for the rooftop solar, not only on individual basis, but also at the industry. Yeah. And this is also that we have soft loan. Yeah, soft loan to kickstart. Yeah. This is very important to kickstart of it. And the other one,
Tenaga provides the soft loan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Under
G-Sparks. Okay.
Right? Yeah. So I think this is where we encourage the usage of the clean energy and the solar. Only that now it had to be completed with battery.
Right.
During these hours, of course, we can enjoy the solar. But soon, when we have reasonable consideration cost of battery to complement with solar, then we can have we actually self-generating electricity, clean energy. And the other one, we have the net energy system, whereby the government encouraged to put the rooftop solar where we can, it's a two-flow. We can supply.
You can supply, you can also buy.
Yeah. So
Right.
this is the way that we are encouraging the consumer,
Consumers.
not only the individual, plus the industry as well.
Industry.
Yeah.
And G-Sparks plays that role, and
Yes.
even soft loan.
Yes.
So hopefully that answered the questions that I think about 7, 8, 9, 10 people asked that question. And please keep them coming. The next one, if you don't mind, and this is good. I think I saw about 12 questions, 13 questions. So let's keep them going, coming. If you don't mind, we go to Tuan's side first, Faraid, yeah. So next couple of questions about EV cars. I think there was a cheeky question about discount on BYD. So you could take that up. The other, there. Tuan's side, congrats on good sales of BYD. Any discount for us? So that's one person asking that question. Two more questions. One is, EV cars are not affordable to majority. What is the strategy to ensure it's affordable? And you mentioned accessible. So that's another question. And one more. How do you forecast consumption of electricity in the light of movement in EV on the auto sector? I don't know whether that's able. 3 questions. Discount.
So the first question first, the discounts definitely. So that's the answer. We always have,
After this, yeah.
we have promotions going on, not just BYD, for multiple brands that we have. So feel free to drop by. There's no sales pitch here, but we do have. Please approach us if there's anything that we could help. Question number 2 with regards to the affordable, right? I wouldn't say the word affordable, accessible, because okay, when it comes to the EV cars, the biggest cost is actually the battery, right? So until the battery cost reduces, then the whole car cost will reduce. So why BYD, for example, has got a very accessible model, right, in China, left-hand drive, whatever that they have left-hand drive, whatever that they have right-hand drive, we try to bring it to Malaysia. So the first model was Atto 3 at 149,000. The next model that's coming could be more accessible soon, and we have 2 more models coming on board within the year. So why is because if you look back at the history of those cars or those companies, BYD started off is actually a battery company. So they control 50-60% of the world's market of your old battery, your Nokia phone, your Samsung phone, the lithium ion phones, right? Those battery they produces, and they ventured into an automotive car business because they have the battery. But they're also selling batteries to different companies in the world. You can Google that. I'm not going to mention names or any organization about the battery. So to answer that question is when the battery cost goes down, and I think it will go down because the rest of it is still quite general, right? And similarly, solar, when it was first started, correct me if I'm wrong, Alizan, when it first started, it was so super expensive, the solar panel. But gradually, most of the technology stuff goes down over time, right? In terms of the raw material. I'm not looking at the resale value of the car. The resale value of the car, the battery of EV cars now give a warranty of 8 years at least. Malaysians keep cars for 5 years, maximum 7 years. Unless you really love the car, you'll go beyond that. Because yes, hire purchase in Malaysia provided loans up to 7 years, sometimes 9 years now, depending on what you want and how you plan your cash flow. However, the maintenance cost will kick in after 7, 8, 9 years. Yes, you reduce paying installments, but the maintenance cost. And so it's a two-way approach here, right? So when the battery, let's say for BYD, after 8 years, the usable of the battery or the performance of the battery is guaranteed, or most of it is still at 65%. So we don't have to change those cars, those batteries yet, even after 8 years. But for peace of mind, because yes, if it's a battery, what will happen to the battery? How about the charging cycle of the battery and all those things, right? So that has been addressed with the warranty. So that's peace of mind. So you put that aside. The rest of it is the normal maintenance. So when it comes to maintenance of EV cars, the second, besides range anxiety, of where do I charge, how long will I get stranded, which I addressed earlier. Second one will be on maintenance. Do we need to maintain? What will happen to the technicians that we have? We upskill them, what will happen? So do you think the EV cars has got no maintenance needed? Or do you still think that it still needs to be maintained periodically? From the floor? No need. You definitely need to maintain those cars, right? Definitely. Everything need maintenance. Even your house need maintenance. Your body need maintenance. You need to go medical checkup and things like that, right? So definitely, because the only thing that's different from an EV car and non-EV car is the engine. ICE, internal combustion engine, versus EV car, which is replaced by motor. The rest of it, the air filter, the aircon filter, your radiator, all those things needs to be maintained. You drive every day, right? The wipers, the wear and tear, the brake pads, the tires. You still get a stone chip on your windscreen. You still need to change, right? So there's still maintenance needed. So tweaking of, back to this morning session, I just want to address on upskilling. Yes, we currently at Sime Darby, 2 out of 10 base that we have, 20% of the base we dedicated for EV cars. And we send our team for upskilling to actually handle high voltage battery handling compared to ICE car. So we never retrench anybody, because do you think it's more difficult to handle an ICE car or in the internal combustion engine, or is an EV car? So actually the ICE car has more complications to handle compared to the EV car, except for the EV car has got a battery. The ICE car has got your lubricant, has got your all those components to be made together, right? So those who have been exposed to ICE car, for them to tweak to EV cars, not so difficult. It's just on how to handle the battery and what happens if it's something happened. That's all. In terms of the other components of the car, it's replaced. It's the same. It's been replaced by just the motor, the twin motor, whatever motor that we have.
Thank you. So see in Tuan side at the end of this for the discount. But more importantly, in terms of making more affordable, is the battery in the longer run through technology advancement and all that, and the other is maintenance, right?
Correct. Actually, more affordable, yeah, that is the major cost of any EV car. Until that portion, over time, it has reduction. I'm sure they will be.
Yeah.
But they are more accessible cars. Prices coming to Malaysia with the exemption of the tax that the government provided, which we welcome it very, very much.
Very good. So keep the questions coming. There are two questions on government policy, but they're related. So, Alizan, if you don't mind handling this for us. Is the government looking to mainstream EV in public transport? Is there a policy in place or in the pipeline to facilitate transition towards large-scale public transportation in major cities in Malaysia? So the second question is not so much EV, but transitioning to public transportation. The first one is more EV in public transportation. Alizan.
Okay, I think first and foremost, there's a large focus on deep electrification, which includes electrification of the public transport system,
Okay.
and this is also part of the national energy policy itself. But again, it's quite fragmented. So when we talk about public transport, some of it is again private-led. Some of it is also led by the local authorities as well. So there's various initiatives that are looking into especially electrifying public transport, but also shifting generally towards public transport as well. So at this moment in time, I don't, you have to ask the Ministry of Transport, but I don't see a comprehensive strategy for electrifying or ensuring renewable energy for the public transport system. But I see there's many initiatives, perhaps a bit more fragmented at the moment, to move towards electrifying, especially.
So you have areas, but it's a bit fragmented, and hopefully the government comes together. So, Syed, you picked up the mic because you wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to address on public transport and jams and things like that. Right, there's EV buses available, and BYD has got that in China, and most of it, Singapore is already on EV. So it's more of not the traffic itself, but it's more of the cleaner air that we breathe. Yeah, so if you have the opportunity to be in Shenzhen, where BYD sits now, is totally different from the previous years before COVID, pre-COVID, if you were in other China cities.
And Alizan, we know that you do work with government on government policies. Maybe this is one area you could encourage them. Back to Faraid, there are two questions related to hydrogen and tenaga. Number one, how does TNB plan to generate hydrogen and what color? And the other one is implication on generation cost and that very dirty word tariff. So,
that's
hydrogen cost
tough
tariff.
question.
Yes.
So let me dwell on the first question. Basically, what was it? Sorry, what was it?
The question is, do you plan to generate hydrogen using hydrogen, and what color?
Yes,
and then impact to the cost.
All right, okay. Right, basically on the hydrogen, you may have known from the public media, we have this MOU with Petronas looking into the production of hydrogen, yeah, basically on the green hydrogen. But in this energy transition, we are looking on the usage. There are two aspects that Tenaga is looking at: utilization, and the other one, business opportunity for production of hydrogen. Yeah. So looking at the spectrum of the hydrogen, the market is from blue to green. The blue is about USD now is about $2 to $3 dollar per kilogram, and the green is about 6 USD per kilogram. And with the COP27, the initiative is to bring down the green hydrogen. But as a utility, we are trying to mitigate what I call the implication on the generation cost. So we are looking at the various sector which the best on the hydrogen to use. Yeah. So that is on the hydrogen usage. We may embark on the blue hydrogen first, because the other thing we have to consider is the security of supply. Whether the hydrogen is available, can keep our generation reliable, the security of the system. That's why we have to look into it. So at the moment, it could, that the pathway could be, we are looking at the blue hydrogen while waiting for the cost, the falling cost of this green hydrogen. Yeah, that could be the path. So the other thing is the aspect on the generation cost. Yeah, right. So now we are looking at what is the low hanging fruits. Yeah. So while waiting for the hydrogen price to come down, we are looking at the low hanging fruits like biomass, biogas, solar. Yeah. Biomass is, we have a lot of these oil palm trees. We can convert them into this wood pellet. Yeah. And we can co-fire in our coal-fired power plant. And that could ensure the security of supply of the fuel to our generation facilities while we were waiting for this falling cost of the hydrogen. Even ammonia is very uncertain because it's a lot of competition for usage of ammonia on the fertilizers industry. So then we have to import. We have to look at the index price of the ammonia. So even now the plant in Japan, about 20% ammonia, they're still waiting on the security of the ammonia and what would the generation cost impact. So at the end of the day, we have, as Tenaga, it's a regulated business, right? It's a regulated business. We have to go back to our Energy Commission, we have to go back to the government, that in order to pursue this decarbonization, energy transition, this will be the impact on the overall big picture. Whether then this is where the policy will come in. Yeah, the incentive from the government, the grant, the funding, the green loan. Yeah, this is very important as impetus for us to accelerate this energy transition. Yeah, thank you.
So much.
Can I?
Yes, sure.
Can I just chip in into this question of the tariff?
Yeah.
Because it is also very much dependent on the policy design and policy decisions made. At this moment in time, the generation costs, we have this imbalance cost pass-through mechanism where essentially what that means is the generation costs will be passed on to the consumers. If I'm not wrong, so that means any increase in generation costs, there will be a likelihood that this will be passed through to consumers. Downstream. And this even includes if, say, there will be a carbon tax or something along those lines. Now, this is something I want to highlight because it's very important because we really need a national discussion on this. There are various policy designs. For example, it can be let's say there's a carbon tax, it can be redistributed to the B40 and so on. So there's a lot of policy decisions to be made in terms of the final tariff here. And I think that's an important consideration to be made.
I saw a note that we've got 3 minutes left. It's such a shame, such a good conversation. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to go one last question, which has got 5 people asking, and that's to you, Tuan Syed. And then after that, we're going to ask one question each to wrap it up. So the question, Tuan Syed, is there a national target for EVs usage? We understand there is. By 2040 is 38%. The question is, what would be the challenges to achieve this target? EV target of 38%, what are the challenges that we need to overcome? Go ahead.
Yeah, again, I think it's the speed. The answer will be the speed on how fast we could bring models into the country that is fully compliant to EV and accessible, affordable, accessible. Because key thing here is still there's product out there, left-hand drive, right-hand drive, but the government provided us 2 years exemption. Will that be sufficient or not? We'll have to see. Definitely the last 1 year has got more impact than the last 5 years in terms of putting cars on the road, EV cars. But the next 2 years, we are rushing to get that on the road as soon as possible. But I think speed of putting those cars on the road and speed of the product availability, that's number one. And number two, to ensure that we achieve that, we have the enough infrastructure to support those People, retrain, not an issue because you already have skill sets that could be tweaked easily. So the bigger things is more of
Availability of the cars and
Exactly.
infrastructure.
correct.
So I remember a point that John F. Kennedy said, don't ask what the country can do for you, but what can you do for the country? So I'm going to turn this around, right? Because you mentioned ESG is a private-led initiative and we heard so much the government should do this. One suggestion from each of you as a panelist. What can we do for ESG? Why don't we start with you, Alizan? What can we do? As we leave this place at 5:30 this evening, what can we do from your perspective?
There's a lot of things that all of humanity
One.
needs to do. So it's always difficult to have. But I think the most important part here, it goes back actually in line with the question of the tariff. There must be a willingness for each and every person to consider what is it that they are willing to sacrifice in terms of meeting these goals. And for example, if you were a T20, should we be paying the second lowest tariff
Tariff rate in ASEAN.
within ASEAN?
Good point.
I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but we have to consider and be willing to be asking these
Consider,
tough
yeah.
questions because, like it or not, they will be coming.
So be willing to consider paying a bit more for our children and grandchildren for the environment. Okay. Farid.
Yeah, basically there should be moving the way forward for this energy transition. That we want to have a clean environment at the same time not sacrificing the security system and the tariff as well. There should be a lot of this public awareness communication.
Okay.
Right. This is where that we can engage with the public. What is for you and what we can do and what will impact us in order to fulfill this energy transition.
Very good. So I guess to take it, what we should do is we should learn as much as possible. And then for our role as business leaders, as father, mothers, to communicate that to our colleagues and the future generation. Thank you so much. And you, Tuan Syed,
Yeah.
besides giving discount. And
All right. And for me, it starts with us. First, you have to believe that this is the direction way forward. Yourself. You accept EV cars, you don't accept EV cars, you accept EV environment or you don't accept environment. As long as the mindset is still no, not ready, not enough, then it will never go anywhere. Whatever, even we give a 10,000 ringgit car, I will not. And because you don't believe it, you just want us to go to the petrol station and pump 3 minutes, get it sorted. So believe, you have to trust and have that belief in you that this is the right way for everybody, then move on from there.
so again, mindset shift and having that belief. But I think, based on all the discussions and all the things that we've read, the ship has left the port, the bus have left the station, the train has moved on. It's up to us as leaders. And I thank Dato' Sharon and the MIDF team for bringing this topic to bear. And I remember 4 years ago, Dato', you were the first to organize such great conference in Kuala Lumpur. So I thank you for that. On behalf of all Malaysians, yeah, MIDF. But like I said, the ship has left the port, the bus have left the station. It's us now to take that responsibility. And I like what you say, ESG is a private-led initiative. So let's take that responsibility, shall we? Thank you very much. Let's give them a major round of applause. Thank you so much, gentlemen.